They don't scream, they don't beg, they don't announce their departure, they simply disappear. But not out of weakness, but out of wisdom. Emotionally strong men leave in silence because they have understood something that most people never realize. Not everything deserves a response, and not every battle is worth the sacrifice of one's own peace. In a world addicted to noise, arguments, and endless drama, there is a rare type of man who has mastered the art of letting go without needing to explain. This man is not cold, nor is he insensitive. On the contrary, he feels everything intensely, but he has learned that his sanity is worth more than proving something to someone who didn't know how to see his value. He doesn't need to justify, doesn't need to beg, doesn't need to convince. Life has already taught him, through pain and disappointments, that silence is not absence, it is a response. That leaving is not giving up, it is overcoming. He knows that true strength is not in staying where there is no respect, but in having the courage to get up and leave without looking back. And that's what we're going to talk about today. Every reason that leads a strong man to walk away in silence reveals more than just behavior. It reveals a code of dignity, self-respect, and emotional clarity.
Before we continue, I need to tell you something. This video only reached you because someone liked it and subscribed to our channel. Now it's your turn to do the same. Leave a like, subscribe, and hit the bell so this chain of knowledge keeps growing and reaching more people. Also, comment down below which city you're watching from, because I want to know how far this video is traveling. Now, no more delays, let's get to the good stuff.
First reason, because they realize they are not valued. An emotionally strong man knows when he is giving more than he receives, and this is one of the cruelest situations a person can experience in a relationship. He notices the small signs, the lack of reciprocity, the disregard for his efforts, the indifference to his presence. It's not that he needs applause or excessive recognition, but every man who loves wants to feel that his worth is seen. When that doesn't happen, something inside him awakens, the realization that continuing to insist is like planting seeds in arid soil. This awakening is silent but powerful. He doesn't argue, he doesn't complain, he doesn't create a list of everything he has done that wasn't recognized. He just observes, processes, and understands that it makes no sense to fight for a space where he is not valued. And here is the difference. While many men wear themselves out trying to prove who they are, the strong man doesn't waste energy trying to convince someone who has already decided not to see him. He chooses the dignity of walking away because he understands that his worth does not depend on external validation. This withdrawal is not just physical, but also emotional. He stops investing energy, stops planning a future, stops offering affection that finds no echo. Gradually, what was once giving turns into silence, and this silence is the clearest proof that he will not settle for being underestimated. He prefers to be alone rather than play a supporting role in the life of someone who doesn't know what they have. And in this choice, he shows that his strength is not in staying, but in knowing when to leave. The impact of this is profound. His absence weighs more than his ignored presence. The person who didn't know how to value him will one day feel the void left by the man who left without a fuss. And that's the point. He doesn't need to get revenge. He doesn't need to make speeches. He doesn't need explanations. The silence of the strong man speaks louder than any words, and this silence is a reflection of his inner certainty. Whoever doesn't recognize his value doesn't deserve the privilege of his presence.
If you're tired of watching her play games, ignore you, and do whatever she wants with your feelings, it's time to show who's in charge of the game. It's time to make her chase you and recognize your true value. In the first pinned comment, I've left a step-by-step guide on how to make her pursue you. Plus, you'll level up and become the best version of yourself. Click now.
Second reason, because they understand that love cannot be begged for. An emotionally strong man knows that true love is born from a genuine desire, not from persistence. He understands that feelings cannot be forcibly extracted, much less won with desperate pleas. When he realizes he has to beg for attention, affection, or presence, something inside him awakens, the clarity that the bond is no longer nourished in a balanced way. And it is at this exact moment that he chooses silence, because for him, love must be natural, or it is simply not love. The pain of a man who feels ignored is intense, but his strength is in not turning that pain into a plea. He doesn't send endless messages, doesn't insist on phone calls, doesn't put himself in the position of begging for crumbs of affection. Instead, he takes a deep breath and accepts reality as it is. And this acceptance, which to many seems coldness, is actually maturity. He knows he can't convince someone to feel what they don't feel, and this clarity prevents him from humiliating himself. Silence in this case becomes a form of self-preservation. He withdraws not out of pride, but because he respects himself. He knows that begging for love is giving up his own dignity, and no truly strong man is willing to pay that price. It is better to be at peace alone than to be trapped in a relationship where only one side gives. It is in this silent retreat that he proves his strength, not through shouting, but through the relinquishment of something that has ceased to make sense. And the effect of this is devastating for the one left behind. Because the man who doesn't beg shows, without needing words, that he is capable of moving on. He shows that his life does not depend on being chosen by someone who doesn't want him, and this attitude is a shock to someone who believed he would always be available. He knows that love is not a bargaining chip, nor a stage for humiliation. If it's not reciprocal, he doesn't insist. He simply leaves. Third reason, because they understand that silence is also a response. An emotionally strong man has realized that not every situation deserves long explanations or endless discussions. He knows that many times, insisting on talking is like trying to convince someone who has already decided not to listen. Silence, in this case, is not an empty space. It is a clear, direct, and even more painful response than any argument. By remaining silent, he transmits something powerful, that he will not waste energy on someone who didn't know how to value him. This silence is not cowardice, but a conscious choice. It's like building an invisible wall between himself and the chaos, between the peace he has built and the noise they try to impose. While others wear themselves out trying to prove their points of view, he understands that walking away is the most intelligent way to make his position clear. Because, deep down, when someone notices the absence of words, they also feel the absence of priority, and that is impossible to ignore. Instead of turning every detail into a fight, he prefers the impact of the void. His silence makes more noise than shouts, because it forces the other person to face reality. They have lost a place in the heart of someone who will not bend. And this silence carries a weight that no speech can achieve, because it is impossible to argue with someone who is simply no longer there to listen. In the end, the silence of the strong man is a lesson. It shows that he doesn't need rehearsed phrases or endless justifications. His response is in the act of withdrawing, of not feeding what has already died, of not giving a stage to those who don't deserve it. Silence is his weapon and, at the same time, his protection. He doesn't need to say it's over. His absence already says everything. Fourth reason, they don't want to waste time trying to convince someone of their own worth. An emotionally strong man sees no point in spending energy to prove who he is. He knows what he carries. He knows what he offers. He knows what he's worth. When faced with someone who insists on doubting his value, the choice becomes clear. Don't fight for recognition where there is no will to see. He understands that time is too precious a resource to be wasted on frustrating attempts to convince someone who has already decided not to value him. He has learned, often the hard way, that convincing someone of his own worth is like trying to explain the beauty of the sun to someone who insists on keeping their eyes closed. This effort brings no return, only fatigue. Therefore, instead of wasting words, he prefers to waste steps that take him away from environments that drain his energy. He understands that his presence should be a privilege, not a burden, and that's why silence becomes his best response. The difference between the common man and the strong man is right here. While many cling to constantly proving who they are, the strong man simply lives. He shows it through actions, but he doesn't insist on justifying what should be obvious. And when he realizes that the obvious is being ignored, he doesn't cling, doesn't insist, doesn't plead. He just walks away, carrying with him the certainty that his value does not diminish because someone refused to see it. This withdrawal is the greatest proof of self-confidence. Because by ceasing to try to convince, he makes it clear that he doesn't need validation to exist in his fullness. And this silent and firm stance usually hurts more than any inflammatory speech. The person who loses this man realizes too late that they were in front of someone who doesn't beg for recognition, but who chooses to live in places where his presence is celebrated, not questioned. Fifth reason, they don't carry burdens that don't belong to them. An emotionally strong man understands that each person is responsible for their own mistakes, choices, and consequences. He does not take on the role of savior for someone who insists on repeating the same destructive patterns, nor does he assume guilt that is not his. Unlike many who get lost trying to solve problems they didn't create, he has learned to protect himself from this weight. He knows that carrying the burdens of others is not a proof of love, but a slow path to emotional exhaustion. This man has already realized that, in relationships, there are those who throw their frustrations and insecurities onto the other person, expecting them to always be the pillar, the fix, the solution. But he does not accept this unfair role, not because he lacks empathy, but because he has enough clarity. He understands that taking on responsibilities that are not his is a silent poison that corrodes his peace, and no man who values his sanity is willing to live like that. By refusing to carry burdens that don't belong to him, he preserves his energy for what really matters: his growth, his goals, and his own battles. This doesn't mean selfishness, but balance. He knows how to support, how to be present, but he never lets himself be trapped by demands that make no sense. His silence is a way of showing that he didn't enter a relationship to be a depository of guilt, but to share moments and responsibilities in a fair way. And that's exactly why he leaves when he realizes he's being suffocated by burdens that aren't his. Because for him, love is not a prison, nor invisible chains that drag him down. Love, for a strong man, is a partnership, and when that partnership breaks, he doesn't hesitate to walk away. His absence is the harshest reminder. He wasn't born to carry pains he didn't plant, and he won't sacrifice his dignity to support the weight that the other person refuses to take on. Sixth reason, when she shows coldness in the moments you need her most. Few things weigh as heavily in a man's life as reaching out for support and finding only indifference. You may be strong, resilient, and accustomed to carrying your own burdens, but there comes a moment when everyone needs a look, a word, a presence that warms the soul. When, instead, she offers coldness, silence, or even contempt, the impact is not just on the heart. It's on trust, on the bond, on the perception of who is truly by your side. This coldness, often, doesn't manifest explicitly. It can be in a "I'm busy" at the exact moment you open up your heart, or in that empty look that passes through you, as if your pain were of no importance. This distance reveals that reciprocity does not exist, that the giving is unilateral, and that, in the end, you have been alone even within a relationship. And the most dangerous thing is when you start to convince yourself that this is normal, that the problem is you for expecting care, for wanting a minimum of human warmth. This self-deception slowly erodes self-esteem, turning you into someone who accepts emotional crumbs in exchange for the promise of a maybe that never materializes. The truth is harsh. Someone who remains cold precisely when you need warmth doesn't deserve the privilege of your giving. The man who learns to recognize this discovers the difference between company and true presence. And, in that awakening, the courage is born to close doors that have been stuck for a long time, making room for relationships where support is not an obligation, but a natural gesture from someone who truly cares. Seventh reason, when she compares you to other men. Few attitudes have the power to wound a man so silently as hearing comparisons with others. It can be a random phrase, a joke, or even a compliment directed at someone that, in practice, carries a veiled criticism of you. This type of behavior slowly erodes your self-esteem, because it's not just about what is said, but the message behind it. You are never enough. These comparisons work like small, invisible stabs. When she talks about the ex who did this, or the colleague who achieved that, what she is transmitting is not admiration for others, but a devaluation of the person beside her. It's a subtle form of manipulation that generates insecurity and even unnecessary competition. The result is an unstable emotional ground where you start to demand too much of yourself to meet expectations that are never exhausted. The cruelest part is that, often, she knows exactly the weight these comparisons carry. They are not innocent. They are psychological pressure weapons to put you in a constant state of probation. And while you wear yourself out trying to reach an unattainable standard, she assumes the position of power, keeping you always running after approval. The truth is that a healthy relationship is not born from comparisons, but from mutual acceptance and valuation. When a woman uses other men as a reference to belittle you, the warning is clear. There is no true admiration there, just a game of domination disguised as sincerity. A man who recognizes this does not let himself be measured by the rule of others, because he knows that his greatness is in being unique and not in being a copy molded by someone else's demands. 8th reason, they refuse to be a second option. An emotionally strong man never accepts a second option position in someone's life. He knows that self-respect begins with the recognition of his own worth, and that no one who truly matters would make him an optional choice. Being in the background is a clear sign that his time, his dedication, and his feelings are not a priority, and he is not willing to submit to that. He notices the subtle signs: messages answered slowly, appointments constantly canceled, attention easily divided. Every detail is analyzed, because for him, consistency is proof of interest and commitment. And when everything points to a lack of priority, he understands that insisting is just giving up his own dignity. The refusal to be a second option doesn't come from pride, but from emotional clarity. He prefers to be alone than to share a space with someone who doesn't recognize his value. This stance requires courage, because it means giving up companionship, moments, and even expectations, but it is a conscious sacrifice for the sake of respect and authenticity. In the end, his absence becomes a reflection of his worth. The person who tries to keep him as a second option silently feels the impact of his decision. He doesn't need to explain or justify. His withdrawal already says everything. By choosing not to be an option, he keeps his strength, his peace, and his right to be a priority in the life of someone who truly deserves him. 9th reason, they don't want to change someone who doesn't want to change. An emotionally strong man knows that he cannot force anyone to evolve or transform. He understands that true changes come from within, and that trying to mold someone by force is a lost battle. He has already learned that insisting on transforming another person is a waste of energy and creates frustration, because each individual is responsible for their own growth. He observes repetitive behaviors, negative patterns, and resistance to evolution, and he realizes that his presence alone will not be enough to cause change. It's not about giving up on someone he loves, but about recognizing clear limits. No one changes because the other person wants them to. They change when they are ready. This discernment avoids emotional exhaustion and keeps his sanity intact. The decision to walk away comes from the awareness that love is not a corrective. He doesn't bear the responsibility of fixing wounds that are not his, nor of transforming someone who does not wish to be transformed. Staying in a relationship like that is getting lost in an infinite battle, where the wear and tear outweigh any positive result. By choosing not to insist, he demonstrates maturity and self-respect. His absence becomes a silent reminder that he values his peace and integrity above all else. He understands that loving is also about knowing when to leave, and that true strength is in recognizing when someone is not willing to walk beside you in an authentic way. 10th reason, because they know that silence hurts more than words. An emotionally strong man understands the power of silence. He has learned that, in many moments, it is not necessary to argue, shout, or justify his actions. His absence and his silence carry a much more impactful message. Every space he leaves, every unspoken word, reverberates more deeply than any verbal confrontation. He understands that words can be interpreted, distorted, or forgotten, but silence has an implacable clarity. By walking away without explanations, he conveys dignity, strength, and the certainty that he is not willing to spend his energy on someone who doesn't value his presence. This silence is a form of protection, but also a mirror that reflects the other person's lack of reciprocity. The strength of this silence lies in its subtlety. He doesn't need to humiliate, reprimand, or expose himself. He just lets the void speak. And it is in this void that many finally realize the weight of his absence, the importance of his presence, and the value of what was lost. It is a silent but accurate blow that avoids unnecessary conflicts and keeps the strong man's integrity intact. In the end, he shows that he is not cold or insensitive. He is strategic. He knows that some lessons cannot be taught, only felt. And by choosing silence, he protects his peace, preserves his strength, and makes it clear that, for him, respect and value are not negotiable. 11th reason. They know that affection cannot be demanded. An emotionally strong man understands that genuine affection is not something to be demanded or begged for. He quickly perceives when the affection he offers is treated as an obligation or expected as a bargaining chip. For him, love and attention should be natural, not the result of demands or manipulation. He observes subtle signs of disinterest or lack of commitment and understands that insisting on receiving affection is giving up his own dignity. He prefers to offer affection to those who value it, to those who respond with reciprocity, than to waste energy trying to extract feelings from someone who is not willing to give. This understanding creates a clear boundary between giving and self-respect. When he realizes that his affection is ignored or underestimated, he walks away, not out of a lack of feeling, but out of emotional awareness. He knows that love is not a debt, and that any attempt to demand affection turns the relationship into an obligation, not a genuine connection. This distance preserves his sanity and reaffirms his inner strength. In the silence of his departure, he leaves a powerful lesson. True affection is not begged for, demanded, or manipulated. The person who loses his presence realizes that the affection of a man like this is not easy to replace, because he only gives it to those who truly deserve it. 12th reason. Because they do not tolerate a lack of loyalty. An emotionally strong man knows that loyalty is not just a beautiful word. It is the foundation of any healthy relationship. He quickly notices when someone acts dishonestly, hides intentions, or fails to keep commitments. And for him, betrayal, lies, or a lack of commitment are not just mistakes. They are clear signs that the relationship does not deserve his emotional investment. He doesn't cling to excuses, justifications, or empty promises. He understands that true loyalty is demonstrated through actions, not beautiful words at convenient times. When he realizes that he is surrounded by a lack of integrity, he chooses to walk away, because staying would mean tolerating something that hurts his own essence and principles. This withdrawal is silent, but has an impact. He doesn't need to confront or argue. His decision to leave communicates more than any discussion could convey. It is the clearest way to show that he does not give up his values, and that those who are not loyal do not deserve a place in his life. By walking away, he reinforces a crucial point. Respect and trust are not negotiable. A strong man prefers solitude to being with someone who doesn't honor commitments, and his absence becomes the silent proof that loyalty is a prerequisite for any lasting bond. 13th reason. Because they know that insisting is humiliating oneself. An emotionally strong man understands that insisting on being valued by someone who doesn't want to recognize his worth is a form of silent self-destruction. He has been through experiences that taught him that persistence in unbalanced relationships doesn't prove love. It only demonstrates weakness in the face of someone who doesn't deserve it. And he refuses to put himself in that position. He quickly notices when attention, affection, or reciprocity are not genuine. And at that moment, instead of begging or pressuring, he walks away. Silence and distance become his most powerful response because he understands that dignity is not negotiable. Humiliating oneself for acceptance is giving up on oneself, something a strong man never allows. His strength lies in the awareness of his own value. He doesn't seek external validation or need guarantees to feel complete. Insisting in the face of indifference would be like trying to light a fire in a soaked area. Useless and exhausting. He prefers to preserve his energy and only invest in relationships where respect and reciprocity exist naturally. By walking away, he teaches without words. He shows that insisting is not love, but submission, that someone who values themselves doesn't beg for attention, and that true strength is in recognizing the time to leave before one's own heart is torn apart by another's vanity. 14th reason. Their time is valuable. An emotionally strong man knows that every minute of his life has value, and that wasting it on relationships that don't bring growth or reciprocity is a luxury he cannot afford. He understands that time is an irreversible resource and that insisting on someone who doesn't show interest is wasting opportunities to live experiences that truly matter. He clearly observes the signs of lack of commitment, constant lateness, unfulfilled promises, inattention to important moments. And, realizing that his time is being underestimated, he chooses to walk away. It's not rush or impatience. It's self-respect and respect for his own life. He prefers to invest in places, people, and situations that truly value his presence. This understanding transforms every choice into power. He doesn't get involved in useless disputes, doesn't waste hours trying to convince or please someone who doesn't show genuine interest. He knows that time dedicated to himself, to his growth, and to those who deserve him is always rewarding, while time spent on others' frustrations only leads to exhaustion. By withdrawing from situations that don't value him, he sends a silent but clear message. Whoever doesn't respect his time doesn't deserve his energy. And this stance, although discreet, is powerful, showing that the strong man does not negotiate priorities or compromise his own life for someone who does not recognize his worth. 15th reason. They know how to see when love has ended. An emotionally strong man has the clarity to notice the signs that the feeling that once existed has run out. He understands that insisting on something that has emotionally died does not bring happiness. It only prolongs the pain and exhaustion for both sides. He carefully observes attitudes, words, and energies, and when he realizes that the bond has lost its strength, he does not delude himself or cling to what no longer exists. This perception is not the result of haste or superficiality. It is the result of maturity. He knows that insisting on keeping something alive when there is no reciprocity is holding on to an illusion. And, unlike many who try to revive what has already ended, he opts for silence and withdrawal, preserving his peace and integrity. He doesn't look for blame or make exaggerated judgments. He just acknowledges reality. Love is not an obligation, and when it ends, the only intelligent attitude is to accept and move on. Staying just out of habit, fear of loneliness, or a vain hope is not part of his stance. By deciding to leave, he teaches without needing to explain. Understanding the end is a form of self-care and self-respect. He proves that strength is not synonymous with stubbornness, but with emotional clarity. Someone who is capable of leaving with awareness and without drama values their own heart and honors the love they lived, even when it comes to an end. 16th reason. Because they know that when trust is broken, it never returns the same. An emotionally strong man understands that trust is one of the most important pillars of any relationship, and that once broken, it never returns with the same intensity. He notices signs of betrayal, lies, or lack of commitment, and understands that rebuilding trust is not just difficult, it is often impossible. He knows that continuing would require a disproportionate effort, carrying insecurities that corrode the relationship. He doesn't let himself be fooled by empty promises or superficial regrets. For him, trust is not negotiable and cannot be restored with just words. He values his own emotional integrity above any attempt to justify the unjustifiable. Staying with someone who has violated this principle would be accepting less than he deserves and compromising his own peace. The strong man chooses clarity instead of an illusory hope. He carefully observes attitudes because he knows that true loyalty is shown in consistent actions, not in repeated justifications. And when he realizes that trust cannot be reestablished, he walks away silently, preserving his dignity and avoiding the emotional exhaustion that attempts to rebuild often bring. This withdrawal is a silent warning. Whoever breaks trust loses more than time. They lose the presence of someone who values honesty above any connection. He doesn't need to shout, doesn't need to beg, and doesn't need to justify his decision. His absence clearly communicates that certain boundaries are not negotiable and that his emotional integrity is non-negotiable. 17th reason. Because the true strong man chooses dignity over suffering. An emotionally strong man has learned that preserving his dignity is more valuable than staying in situations that cause pain or humiliation. He understands that suffering in silence for something that adds nothing to him is a waste of vital energy, and that true strength is in walking away before suffering becomes a habit. He recognizes when he is being disrespected underestimated, or treated unfairly. And instead of trying to correct the other person or cling to what is not worth it, he chooses the path that keeps his integrity intact. Leaving is not a defeat, but an act of courage and self-love. This choice requires awareness and firmness. He understands that life is too short to spend precious moments on suffering that does not lead to real learning. Therefore, he prefers to walk away silently, preserving his peace and showing that dignity is never negotiable, even in the face of strong emotions and affectionate ties. By walking away, he makes it clear that he does not accept being part of relationships that diminish his essence. His decision is a silent example of strength and maturity. He chooses to honor himself, not to submit to unnecessary pain, reminding everyone that dignity is worth more than any bond that compromises self-respect. 18th reason, because they value their peace above all else. An emotionally strong man has learned that his emotional tranquility is a treasure that cannot be compromised by unnecessary conflicts or unbalanced relationships. He understands that constant drama, endless arguments, and endless demands are silent thieves of peace, and that staying close to such situations would be an unjustifiable drain. He knows how to recognize when the environment or the person around him threatens his balance. And, realizing that there is no room for respect and harmony, he chooses to walk away. It's not weakness, but emotional intelligence. He prioritizes the serenity of his mind and heart, instead of insisting on bonds that disturb him. The valuing of peace is reflected in every decision he makes. He avoids pointless fights, remains silent when he realizes that explanations change nothing, and distances himself from those who do not contribute to his well-being. His absence is not indifference, but protection. He is taking care of himself before anything else. By choosing to withdraw, he teaches that maintaining one's own peace is an act of strength and self-love. The person who loses his presence feels the difference, but he does not turn back. He chooses environments and people who elevate his energy, proving that a truly strong man knows that serenity is a precious and non-negotiable asset. 19th reason, because they know that loving is also about knowing when to leave. An emotionally strong man understands that loving does not mean staying at all costs. He knows that there are moments when the deepest gesture of love is to recognize that the relationship is no longer good, and that continuing would only prolong pain and frustration. Leaving, in these cases, is not abandoning, but protecting both himself and the other person. He has learned, often from hard experiences, that insisting on staying when the connection is gone only creates resentment and emotional exhaustion. True love does not trap, does not suffocate, and does not force changes. It respects space, recognizes boundaries, and acts with wisdom, even if that means walking away. This withdrawal is silent, strategic, and conscious. He doesn't need to justify every step or explain his decision in detail, because he understands that some feelings are only valued when dignity is preserved. He leaves with respect, leaving lessons that words could not convey. By choosing to leave, he shows that loving is also about knowing when a cycle has ended. He proves that strength is not synonymous with stubbornness, but with emotional clarity. Someone who is capable of leaving with awareness and without drama values their own heart and honors the love they lived, even when it comes to an end. If this video made a difference for you, please like it and subscribe to the channel. Every video we create here is made with great care, always with the goal of helping you develop and become your best version. We want to share practical and direct tips that will truly have a positive impact on your life. So, don't waste time and comment below with the word gratitude and the phrase, "in search of my best self." With this, the algorithm will show this video to even more men who are looking for growth. Your engagement in the comments is essential to ensure our content reaches those who need these tips the most. Furthermore, your support with a like and a subscription to the channel strengthens our work and gives us motivation to continue creating valuable content for your journey. The more you interact, the more men will also have access to this type of information, which only helps our mission to transform lives. So, thank you for being with us on this journey. Stay tuned for the next videos, because we are always bringing new things to help you evolve. Big hug, and see you in the next video.